Hi everyone, and welcome to Sweet Pea Seeds Inspirations. My name is Sydney, and today we are going to make the macaroon knitted beanie. First, we are going to start off with the brim, which is a 1-row repeat, which is knit 2, purl 2 for a total of 5 rows. Then we are going to work on the body, which is going to be a simple 6-row repeat. All you need to know how to do is how to knit one and also how to slip one with your working strand of yarn in the front. And that's really about it. Now, you do see some color work going on here. Now, we will be working with one color per row. You just need to know how to bring your colors up. That's about all you need to know how to do. It's very, very simple. And then we will work on the decreasing rows for the crown. Now, the last 2 rows that you work before starting the crown, we are going to have to decrease those 2 rows by 2 per each. So, which will be in a total of 4 stitches that we will decrease before actually working the rows for the crown. Now, you can either work in today's video either a size for a small child, and that's going to depend on how many repeat rows that you work, or you can also make a teenage or a small adult size beanie. So the circumference of both of these beanies are 19 inches. Now, the adult height, which is measuring from the brim all the way up to the crown, is 7 5/8. And then the child is from the brim to the crown is 7 inches. Now, if you want to make this beanie either a little bit bigger or smaller, the multiple for this beanie is going to be 2, but it also needs to be divided by 6. Now, if you do that with the divided by 6, you do not have to decrease the last 2 rows before actually working the crown. When I was coming up with the numbers, I was not taking that in effect. So if you can find a number that is multiplied by 2, but can also be divided by 6, then you will be good. I am also currently working on a written pattern for this knitted beanie that will be posted on Ravelry. So hopefully by the time this tutorial comes out or when you are watching, the pattern will already be released. So if you are interested, you might need to check down in the description box. If not, keep up with my community post as I will post on there when the pattern has been released. So let's go ahead and go over some materials that you are going to need. We will start off with yarn first. You can use whatever colors that you would like as long as they are a worsted weighted yarn. The gauge swatch is going to be down in the description box for you if you need it. And I would say you might need about 200 yards, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, but I would say that is a good estimate. But anyways, 2 different colors, worsted weighted yarn, and more likely about 200 yards. Now, the needles that you need to use, these are a 5.5 millimeter knitting needle with a 16.5 inch circular to it. So you will need one of those. And then you are going to need also some DP ends. I did go down a size when working the crown to a 5 millimeter because that's all I had. I do have 4 DP ends. Use whatever you have as long as it's roughly about the same size of knitting needle. And then you are going to also need a stitch marker, maybe a stitch stopper when working the DP ends, a tapestry darning needle, some scissors, and then also a measuring tape if you would like. So we are going to start off with a long tail cast on of 76 stitches, and then we will begin working the 1-row repeat for the brim, which is going to be in total 5 rows. Go ahead and place your stitch marker once you have gotten all 76 cast-ons on your right hand knitting needle. And now what we're going to do is we're going to do a total of 5 rows. That is going to be knit 2, purl 2, knit 2, purl 2, and this is going to be our brim. So again, for the next 5 rows, we're going to start off with a knit 2, and then we're going to go ahead and purl 2. Again, knit 2. And purl 2. The big thing here is just making sure that your stitches aren't twisting while you're knitting them, and you're just going to go ahead and continue repeating that knit 2, purl 2 for a total of 10 rows. You should leave off with a purl 2. Once I have gotten my 5 rows completed, I will meet you once I have gotten that done. Now that you have all 5 rows completed, we will start working on the 6th row repeat, and we're going to go ahead for the first 2 rows, continue working with color A, which again is going to be my burgundy color. So for the first row repeat, what we're going to do is we are going to start off by making sure that our working strand of yarn is in the front of our work, and then we are going to slip 1. And then for the next stitch, we're going to knit. And that is going to be the repeat unit for this first row. So again, we're going to make sure that our working strand of yarn is in the front of our work. We're going to slip 1. And then in the next stitch, we're going to knit. So again, making sure that our working strand of yarn is in the front of our work. Slip 1 purlwise, and then we're going to knit 1. So let's go ahead and continue working that for this row. Again, making sure that your working strand of yarn is in the front of your work. We're going to slip 1 purlwise, and then knit the next stitch. So let's go ahead and continue repeating that. Once you make it to the end, I will meet you back around. And you should have left off with a knit 1. So for the second row repeat, we're going to go ahead and continue working with our color A. And very, very simple, we're going to knit each stitch. So again, for row number 2, we're going to go ahead and knit each stitch. So let's go ahead and work this row, and then I will meet you once I have made it back around, and then we will go ahead and do a color change. So now for row number 3, we're going to go ahead and do a color change to your color B. And we're going to start off with a knit 1, and then we're going to move our working strand of yarn to the front, and then we're going to slip 1 purlwise. And that is going to be the repeat unit for row number 3. So it's very similar to row 1, but we have changed the placing of our stitches. So for row 1, we start with a slip stitch, versus row 3, we start with a knit stitch. So let's go ahead and continue repeating that. So again, the repeat unit, we're going to go ahead and knit 1, and then we're going to make sure that our working strand of yarn is in the front of our work, and we're going to slip 1 purlwise. Again, knit 1. Move our working strand of yarn to the front, and then slip 1 purlwise, and then knit 1, and then slip 1 purlwise, making sure that our working strand of yarn is in the front. and one more time. We're going to knit one, moving our working strand of yarn to the front, and slip one purlwise. So let's go ahead and continue repeating that until we have made it back around. You should leave off with a slip one with the working strand of yarn in the front. Again, you should have left off with a slip one with your working strand of yarn in the front. Now for rows 4, 5, and 6, so for the next 3 rows, we're going to continue working with our color B, but very, very simple. We are going to knit those 3 rows. So again, for rows 4, 5, and 6, we're going to knit each stitch. So I'm going to go ahead and work these 3 rows up, and then I will meet you for further instructions once I have gotten these 3 rows. Once you have gotten those 3 rows completed, we're going to start the 6 row repeats over again. So now we need to switch our color from color B back to color A. And I'm just going to bring up my color A and then take my color B and move it to the back. You might have to move your skeins around or your cakes, whatever you're using, around a little bit. Or if you have a different method, use whatever method, just making sure you are catching your yarn. So for the first row repeat, we are going to start off with making sure that our working strand of yarn is in the front of our work. And we're going to go ahead and slip one purlwise. And then we're going to knit one. And that is the repeat unit for row 1. So taking our working strand of yarn, place it in the front, and then purl or slip one purlwise, and then knit one. So again, we're going to making sure that our working strand of yarn is in the front, slip one purlwise, and then knit one. So let's go ahead and continue repeating that for the remainder of this row. Again, this is the first row repeat over again, and I will meet you once I have made it back to my starting point. Again, you should have left off with a knit one, and that was the first row repeat over again. So for the second row, working with color A, we're going to go ahead and knit each stitch. So let's go ahead and work this row. Again, we're just going to knit each stitch, and this is the second row repeat over again. So once I have gotten this row completed, I will meet you for the third row repeat. So for row number 3, we're going to go ahead and switch to our color B, making sure that you do catch your yarn. And for the third row repeat again, we're going to start off with a knit one. And then we're going to making sure that our working strand of yarn is in the front of our work. And we're going to slip one purlwise. And we're going to go ahead and repeat that for the third row repeat. So again, we are going to knit one, and then making sure that our working strand of yarn is in the front of our work, and slip one purlwise. Knit one, move your working strand of yarn to the front, slip one purlwise. So go ahead and continue repeating that for the remainder of this row. Again, this is the third row repeat, and then the next 3 rows after you get this row completed, so rows 4, 5, and 6, you'll continue working with color B, and you will knit those 3 rows. So I'm going to go ahead and get all of that completed, and then I'm going to meet you for further instructions. we're going to go ahead and continue that 6-row repeat until we get to our desired size. So from what I have calculated up is for a small child, probably around the age 4, 5, maybe 6 or 7 years old, you will need to knit up 30 rows just for the body. Now for a small women's to medium, you will need to knit up about 36 to 42 rows. Now the last 2 rows, the very last 2 rows before we start actually decreasing, the last 2 rows we do need to decrease from 76 to 72, which that is going to be the next step, is decreasing those 2 rows. So go ahead and continue working your 6-row repeat until you get to the very last 2 rows, and then we'll start working that. When you have made it to the last section that you're going to work for the 6-row repeats, and you have made it to the very last 2 rows, and before you start working the crown, we are going to decrease those 2 rows. Where we are working with 76 stitches, we need to decrease down to 72. So what we're going to do is, still using our color B, we are going to knit together the first 2 stitches, and then we are going to knit 36 and then decrease again. So go ahead and knit 36 stitches. Then once you have knitted 36 stitches, we're going to go ahead and knit the next 2 stitches, and then we're going to knit the remaining, which you should have 36 stitches left. I'm going to go ahead and knit these last stitches, and then we are going to do another decrease row before actually working on the decreasing rows for the crown. Still working with color B. Once you have made it back to your starting point, again, we're going to start with a knit 2 together. And then now we are going to knit 35 stitches. So go ahead and knit 35 stitches after you have done that knit 2 together, which is a decrease. And once you have gotten all 35 stitches, we're going to go ahead and do another knit 2 together, and then you're going to knit the remaining 35 stitches. Once you have gotten that row completed, we will now begin working on the decreasing rows for our crown. And if you want to, you can go ahead and switch back to your color A. Unfortunately, I do not have a lot left from my color A, so I will just continue working with my color B. Now, if you want to go ahead and work ahead, we are going to be decreasing by 6 stitches for each row. So this first row, we're going to knit 10 and then do a knit 2 together, which will give us a total of 66 stitches once we are done, where we are going to be decreasing by 6 stitches each row. And we're going to do that until we get a total of 18 stitches in total. So for this first row, again, we're going to start off by knit 10 stitches. So once you have knitted 10, we're going to go ahead and knit 2 together. And we're going to do that for a total of 6 times. So we've already done 1. We're going to knit 10 again. So once you have knitted 10, we're going to knit 2 together again. And that's going to be the repeat unit for this row. So again, knit 10. And once you have knitted those 10 stitches, you're going to knit 2 together. And we're going to go ahead and continue repeating that until we have made it back to our starting point. And you should have a total of 66 stitches. And you should have left off with a knit 2. Again, you should have in total 66 stitches. So we're going to do another decrease row, and we're going to go ahead and knit 9 stitches. So once you have knitted 9, we're going to go ahead and knit 2 together. And that is going to be the repeat unit for this row. So again, we're going to go ahead and knit 9. And then we're going to knit 2 together. So let's go ahead and continue repeating that. Again, you'll do that for a total of 6 times. And once you have made it back to your starting point, you should leave off with a knit 2 together and have in total now 60 stitches. Again, you should have left off with a knit 2 together, and you should have a total of 60 stitches. Now for the next row, we're going to go ahead and knit 8. And then we're going to knit 2 together. And that is the repeat unit for this row. So again, we're going to knit 8. And then knit 2 together. And we'll go ahead and continue that repeat unit for the remainder of this row, which will then give you 54 stitches and leaving off with a knit 2 together. For this next row, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to my DPNs. You can do that whenever you feel like it. Where we are decreasing, for me, it is getting a little bit harder to slide my stitches without stretching them so much. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to DPNs. Again, you can do that whenever you feel like you need to. So what I have done here is I have taken one of my stitch stoppers, and I have placed it on the end of my very first DPN that I'm going to be using. So this indicates my starting and stopping point. Now I have a total of 4 DPNs, but one of those is going to count as a working DPN. So where we have 6 decreasing sections, I'm going to divide that by 3, which is going to put 2 decreasing sections on each of these DPNs, which is not going to include one of the working DPNs. So we're going to go ahead and just work as we normally would if working on a circular needle. So I'm going to start with my very first DPN, and I'm going to, for this next row, I'm going to knit 7. And once I have knitted 7, I'm going to go ahead and knit 2. So that is going to be the repeat unit for this next row. So we're going to knit 7. And then I'm going to knit 2 together. Now I'm going to switch to another DPN. And again, I'm going to knit 7. And then knit 2 together. So I'm just working my stitches off of my circular needle, and where I have 3 DPNs that the stitches are going to be placed on, I've divided my 6 sections into 3, so which is going to put 2 sections on each DPN. So again, I'm going to knit 7. And then I'm going to knit 2 together. And I am very, very sorry about all the rattling. That is my circular needle hitting the table. So then I'm going to go ahead and switch over to another DPN. And I'm just going to go ahead and repeat that process until I have all of my stitches on my DPNs. I now have all of my stitches on my 3 DPNs. I still have my working DPN. So I have made it back to my starting point. Again, I just used a stitch stopper to indicate where I stop and start. So I'm just going to work as if these were the same as circulars. So I'm going to, took my stitch stopper and placed it on my now working DPN. And now for this next row, we're going to knit 6. And then once you have knitted 6, we're going to knit 2 together. And that is going to be the repeat unit for this row. So we're going to knit 6, and then knit 2 together. So go ahead and continue repeating that for the remainder of this row, and then you will have a total of 42 stitches. And we're just going to go ahead and continue decreasing until we have a total of 18 stitches. Once you have gotten a total of 18 stitches, you're going to go ahead and cut your yarn, leaving a somewhat long of a tail so that you can slide your stitches off of your knitting needle and then cinch up your beanie and then weave in those ends. So you can really do this however you would like. I just like to go through that back loop as if I'm knitting in the back loop and pull my stitches off of my knitting needle, and then at the same time cinch up the top of my beanie. So you can do that however you would like. So I'm just going to cinch that up a little bit. I will go back around just for extra security. And then once I have gotten all the way around, I'm going to poke my tapestry or darning needle into that little hole, flip it on the inside out, inside out. And then I'm just going to go through those, what would be the purl bumps, and weave in my ends. I'll go down a few stitches or a few rows, and then I like to go back up again, skipping that very first one so it actually catches and not just run back through those same stitches. And then I might do that one more time, going the next few stitches over and then back up again. You can weave in your ends however you would like. That is completely up to you, but this is just what I like to do. And then weave in the rest of your ends. And there is our knitted beanie. I just want to stop and say thank you for tuning in today. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to give this video a like, share, comment, or subscribe. If you do have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can always feel free to email me, which will be down in the description box, or you can also ask away in the comments. But again, thank you for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial, and I will see you guys in the next one.